Gamers derogatory are famously, what's the word I'm looking for? Completely fucking miserable. Look at many people's reactions to the Game Awards, or really just about any gaming discussion on like Twitter or Reddit, and you might reasonably come away with the understanding that nobody actually likes video games. They just like arguing with others and complaining online. And to be honest, it's just completely exhausting, both being that negative and trying to hold conversations with people who are that negative. So I wanted to spread some positivity and talk about some games that I absolutely love rather than partake in whatever the hell is happening on social media. A while back, my friend asked me what the Disgaea series was about. He'd never played it and wanted to know a bit more about it. This video isn't about him, but the timing of him bringing up Disgaea brought about an interesting thought in my head. At the time, I was playing through the latest game in one of my other favorite series, Atelier, and at first glance the two games seem nothing alike. One's a tactical RPG and the other is pure turn-based or occasionally experiments with ATB systems. But as I was remembering all of the reasons that I loved Disgaea while playing through Atelier, I realized that these games more or less satisfy the exact same itch in my mind. Also, that I'd apparently never thought of both series at once before, my lack of object permanence may need to be studied. To me, both games very much feel like the video game equivalent of junk food. And I'm using the term lovingly, I don't mean it in an unhealthy way, I mean in more of a comforting way. In a, you just worked 12-hour days all week, but it's finally Friday and you picked up a pint of ice cream on your way home and you can now collapse on the couch and vegetate kind of way. And my walls are getting tired of listening to me yap on about how much I love these games, so this is becoming a YouTube video just so they can get a break. But they still had to listen to me record this. Moving on. Now, what do I mean when I equate these series to junk food, and to each other for that matter? Well, let's break it down a bit. The first aspect is typically they have more of a low-stakes story, one that doesn't require too much brain power to keep up with, allowing the gameplay loop to increase in complexity without the whole game feeling overwhelming. Now, this might sound a bit weird given the incredibly high stakes generally present in Disgaea's and increased stakes in the more recent Atelier games' narratives, but I promise this makes sense. For a lot of other games, RPGs especially, the story is a huge draw to me and a significant reason why the games resonated so well with me. Persona, Final Fantasy, Xenoblade, Expedition 33, sure they typically have great gameplay as well, but the narratives are just as big a draw to these games as the gameplay is. But for Atelier and Disgaea, all I really require is that the narrative is there. When I do care about the story, it's more about the moment-to-moment interactions, as these games don't really call for some grand overarching story that makes perfect sense when you make a 12-hour video essay about it. They only really demand the story to exist, and then the humor and characters can carry the players across the finish line. Yeah, I mentioned that the Atelier games have upped the stakes with some of their more recent entries, but at their core they're still focusing on the slice of life. I don't have to process the secrets of the universe and can instead enjoy cute characters doing cute things and silly moments full of whimsy. And that's fine. I have plenty of games where I can overanalyze and hyper-invest into the narratives. Occasionally I want something a bit more relaxed where it's fine if I miss a few lines of dialogue. Maybe I wanted something to do while watching a YouTube video or a live stream and I was temporarily distracted by that. Or maybe my mom sent me a text that I really should respond to. I'm not going to be catastrophically confused for the rest of the playthrough, although most games now do have a message log or message history if I do need to double check something. But when I do manage to focus and perceive the dialogue for 5 straight minutes, I can find a lot of self-contained stories about the party shipping Slade and Rias together, or Reyes being forced to look after a child. If I miss out on a bit of context for that, then so what? There'll be 30 more moments like that I'll get to enjoy. And yeah, I care about the main narrative and Lara stealing our book, and I'll get right on top of that. But first I need to see what Claudia and Tottori have to say, and Sophie has to teach me some new alchemy recipes. Moving on to Disgaea, its story is definitely a bit more active than Atelier, but it's still not particularly demanding of the player. If you miss a few lines, for the most part, you can check the message log or wait for the next joke. The tone of Disgaea is much edgier than Atelier, but it still holds on to that same light-hearted feeling. It's not trying to deliver moments that make your jaw drop in awe as you ponder the implications of what you just heard. It's constructing the ultimate zombie by giving it a horse wiener. It's creatively calling someone a bitch. And it's having the characters play it completely straight despite it being the most out-of-pocket shit you've ever heard.
A horse wiener? Now, that's dangerous! Guys, don't let your guard down!
And of course, I do still love the more serious games. Expedition 33 quickly became a top 2 game of all time for me, but if I was playing a game of that intensity every couple of weeks or even every month, I'd be completely mentally exhausted. That's just a lot of emotional investment, and sometimes I just want something lighter and easier to digest. So I play the game with horse wieners. Please don't take that sentence out of context. Now, if that was all the games were, then they'd probably just be fine, but nothing worth making an entire video glazing them over. But as I mentioned earlier, it's the balance between gameplay weight and narrative weight that makes these games so incredibly enjoyable for me. To counteract the relatively, I don't want to say shallow, as that kind of has a negative connotation to it, but I guess I'll say Tamer Stories, the min-maxing of these games has incredible depth and is the big reason why they fill such a similar role in my mind. And the min-maxing is simple enough to generally not require 100% of my brain power, but interactive enough to make my decisions feel meaningful. It gives the same dopamine hits of grinding, and to be honest, traditional grinding is still a significant part of the Disgaea gameplay loop, but it's methodical enough and rewarding enough that I still feel like my time is still being respected. Now, if you do like grindy as hell games, power to you. I watched one of my friends play Wizardry, and it felt like he must have spent 70% of his playthrough just grinding Murphy's Ghosts, and he was just having the time of his life, but I couldn't do that personally. I need the grind to be a bit more engaging and to really feel the power gained within a reasonable amount of time. Looking at Atelier specifically, grinding out levels is relatively pointless, as particularly in modern Atelier games, stat gains from level ups are fairly minuscule, but the alchemy system is where the real meat and potatoes are. Normally, I don't particularly care too much for complex crafting systems in games, or really often any crafting system, because I don't usually want to take the time out of the parts of the game that I am really enjoying in order to learn the crafting system or backtrack and farm up the materials to craft what I want. Usually I find it just breaks the pacing, but for me the alchemy is the gameplay loop that everything else is interrupting. The systems are simple enough that you can get a basic grasp of them relatively easily and have a fine enough time on the lower difficulties, but also expansive enough to where mastering it makes an incredibly notable impact on the higher difficulties. A good place to start with crafting better items is by increasing the quality or the item level. Higher quality items are considerably stronger than lower quality ones, so focusing on making the highest quality final product is a really easy way to quickly improve your power. But raw materials don't often come at max quality, so you have to find a way to get ingredients that are that powerful. So you discover loops, where item A can be used to make item B can make item C, and item C can make item A. And by repeating this loop, especially if you can pass on a quality increasing trait to double dip on, you can gradually make higher and higher quality ingredients until eventually you're at max quality. Or if you're playing Atelier Fierce, you just have a one item loop where distilled water can be an ingredient to make more distilled water, so it's completely trivial to get max quality ingredients. Now say you want to go even further beyond, and you're looking into getting some better traits on your final product. Your ingredients are already very high quality, so the final product will naturally be high quality, so you don't need the quality boosting traits anymore. But your weapon would love some attack bonus traits. So you look through your ingredients list, and the only ingredient that gives an attack bonus is a blackberry. But that's not an ingredient for a staff. So you have to look at the ingredients of your ingredients and continue until you find something that takes a blackberry as an ingredient, then synthesize everything passing that attack trait the whole time until you get back to your weapon. And now you've discovered chains. And many games have trait fusion, where similar traits can combine into a stronger version. Or in the Ryza games, you can combine the same trait with itself to level it up and increase its effect. So now you have to use multiple chains to get a trait from both a Blackberry and a Sturdy Claws so that you can combine both traits on your final synthesis ingredient. Or in Ryza's case, utilize loops to fuse all the stackable traits onto one item that you can then pass on to your final item. And before you know it, you've made a whole spreadsheet and discovered all the mysteries of the universe just to get your staff an extra 50 attack. Moving on to Disgaea, as I've said, it scratches a similar itch. It's maybe a bit more mindless if you want to be completely optimal with your time, but if you don't mind being a bit less efficient, then figuring out your own progression path can be a lot of fun. Figuring out how strong you can make the enemy so that you can still one-shot the grinding stages, or running item worlds to get stronger weapons to let you get back up to speed quicker after a reincarnation. Sure, you can just look up a Primal Liquid guide, and honestly I've done it at a couple points to get myself pointed in the right direction, but the gameplay and optimization loop is fun enough for me that I don't mind if I'm less efficient if I can have fun doing it. You're constantly checking for what aspect of your characters is lacking, whether it's reincarnation bonuses, equipment, juice bar bonuses, abilities, and it's a giant game of whack-a-mole, tending to the aspects that need improving so that you can continue grinding out the strongest characters you can get. Overall, I have a bit less to say here for Disgaea, as the general flow is a bit more straightforward, and a large portion of it is just simply grinding. And while we're on the topic of grinding, I came across a Reddit thread a couple months back asking if grinding was actually fun, or if we're all just addicted to watching numbers go up, and one of the responses really jumped out at me. I can't speak to the specific example they used, as I've never played Warframe, but what they were saying really exemplified why I love Disgaea and Atelier. You could consider the game grindy, but that grinding is also just playing the game? I enjoy the gameplay, so I play the game. I've played it a lot, I've grinded to get certain things, but I enjoy the gameplay, so it wasn't a grind derogatory, it was just playing the game. Most of my time in Disgaea and Atelier is grinding, but that grind is the main gameplay loop that's keeping me there in the first place. I love starting from nothing, slowly building up my alchemy materials until I'm able to make a bomb powerful enough to level a continent. Discovering loops to get to maximum quality, or figuring out chains to get the exact traits I need from my raw ingredients onto the proper synthesized ingredients. Or diving through the item world to get a super powerful weapon to carry me through the next while. And tying it back to what I was saying with the story, the balance between story and gameplay creates an experience that's very easy to pop in and out of. If I set the game down for a month because I've gotten busy, it's not like I'm completely lost when I open it up again, and I don't feel bad about trying to experience the maximum amount of gameplay in between story segments. Compared to something like, I don't know, Silent Hill 2, where the mysteries of James and the town were constantly pulling me forward, despite the existential dread I got from the prison section, because I had to know what happened next. These games are basically like, oh yeah, no, the story will be there when you're ready. Take your time. And that's why I find these games to be my kind of perfect junk food games. They're easier to digest and not particularly demanding if you don't want them to be, but also loaded with depth if you really do want them to be. Atelier has lower difficulty options if you do end up caring way more about the story or the characters than the gameplay, to allow you to breeze through, and then if you do decide to engage with the systems, you can really reap your rewards for doing so. And these aren't the only games that I get this type of experience from. Katamari is another big one that also falls under video game junk food for me, but it doesn't quite delve into the same gameplay depths of Atelier or Disgaea should you really want to go wild.